Rumors have been swirling about Apple dabbling in the car market. While some of those might be falling flat, the bottom line is our cars are getting more tech intensive, and that means cybersecurity for them. Let's bring in Ong Sway to talk about the subject. He's a CEO and chief scientist at Red Balloon Security, company working with some major automakers on security for the tech. So Ong, welcome back to the show. What's the status right now? Are all these car makers already developing cybersecurity and preventing against threats, or is this a huge market to come?
Well, so there's a lot of work being done now, and there is a huge market to come. But I think we're going to talk about some of the partnerships that we're seeing from Apple and Google. I think Amazon did one with automakers. So that seems like the cool thing to do. I'm not an expert at this or anything, but I think the world wants to connect your car to the internet and get data from you. So,
Is that what this is about?
People love the internet, people love cars, right? You put the two things together, it probably will be a good idea. So, and this is something that I've said since I was probably, like 4 foot tall and much younger. So, sometimes when you connect to the internet connects back, and that's usually bad. So, I think the trends that we're seeing, right? I think the consumers are going to like their cars connected to the internet because you get something like Alexa integration. Mm-hmm. I think the automakers want to do that because, they'll get data and it's extra functionality. But who else will like it? Hackers will like it because it's actually pretty hard to hack something when it's not connected to the internet. But when it is, that becomes a lot easier. So
what does a car hack look like? Do we know what the threats are right now if we're only just kind of emerging into this world?
Yeah, and so what does the future of car hacking look like? Well, this is actually not that complicated. And we've taken apart lots and lots of computers in these cars, and more or less, these things have the cybersecurity posture of your laptop circa 1998. And that's pretty much what the small computers that control the engine timing and all of the hard real-time things in the car, that's where their security's at. So imagine redoing potentially 1998 to 2003, right, with all of the cyber attacks that we saw back then, but this time in all the cars, right? So I think if we fall down in the cybersecurity task, that's probably the future that we will see soon. But companies like Red Balloon and others are certainly trying to put cybersecurity technologies into these cars as quickly as possible. Now, actually, I'm sure the audience of your show probably sits back and think about the state of technology and the state of the world, and like to make small predictions about what will happen next. So I think that question that you raised is super good, right? So what does a real cyber attack on cars look like? So there's probably hackers are probably not going to drive you off the road to try to kill you, right? Like there's very little money to be made in that. And cybercrime, at the end of the day, is a business. So here's something to think about. Right, and we've seen ransomware for your laptop, for your computer, right? How terrible would it be if we have ransomware for cars?
What would that look like?
Why wouldn't that? Well, so you go to turn on your car and your engine doesn't start, right? You get a little message on the dashboard that says, "Pay me a Bitcoin," or your car won't start. So ransomware for physical cars, and that's probably something that you'll probably pay up on. So that's just one way that I can see, cyber or organized crime in cyber crime monetizing exploitation of cars when it's all connected to the internet. So, that's probably a thing that we might see coming if we don't.
When I buy a computer today, some of them will have a cybersecurity and a built-in protection system. Others who are very savvy with tech, I'm sure you develop your own, right? And my tech friends say, you don't want the thing that comes with the computer. I'm going to buy my own and get a special, degree of protection on top of it. For cars, do we know what that's going to look like? Are the end users going to make a choice about what type of cybersecurity they want, as almost like an insurance, or is this just going to be a cost incurred by the automakers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So at the end of the day, with the way firmware is put into these cars and how safety critical all of those components are, I think you're going to have to see cybersecurity built into the firmware of every ECU inside the car, and that is something that I think will come prepackaged as part of the car, as a feature, cybersecurity as a feature, just like you have a safe, like a seatbelt, right? You're probably going to have, security as a consideration going forward. I don't think you're going to see the consumer or the driver, right, installing, antivirus on the car itself, right? That's probably not how the future of, cybersecurity for cars will look like.
So, okay, the idea here that I think is really interesting is this notion of how a hacker becomes profitable from this, right? The kind of scary situation of somebody taking control of my car physically is in theory possible, but not the most likely one. In terms of the business around cybersecurity threats, to your point, based on what we've seen over the past year, there's been some pretty major hacks, right? There's been some pretty major events, but for the most part, they've been in different industries. Have there been in any kind of a major kind of like eye-opening moments to say, okay, our vehicles are also under threat here, maybe outside of kind of the commercial side that maybe we don't see so much?
Yeah, so let's compare, what we know about cybersecurity for the rest of computing, right, and what we know about cybersecurity for cars. We don't actually really have the tools to detect whether the small engine controller computer in your car has been compromised by an attack. So I think the technology that, does that sort of thing is something that Red Balloon has created over the years, and it does exist, but it hasn't really seen introduction into the automotive market. So here's the fun question, how would you even know if your car has been, compromised, if the attacker doesn't actually, pull the trigger, right, and do something that you will notice. Just like, for example, SolarWinds, how do we, I think at least 6 months went by, right? SolarWinds being in deployment, that attack, without anybody really noticing, right? So it could be one of those.
Very interesting. Ong, before we let you go, of course, what's going on there? Is that a car that you're working on?
So this is the brand new Red Balloon security office, and this is actually our small conference room. We got a plate called it Conf Room. It turns out, making a small conference room and getting rid of the echoes and making it sound good is pretty expensive. So it pretty much costs as much as getting this Rolls Royce. I usually sit in this thing to make calls, but since I'm the only, I think there's 3 people in the office now, so the whole office is kind of a conference room. But this thing is great for making phone calls.
All right, I like it. It doesn't look like it's got a whole lot of tech in it, though.
No, this is a 1965 Silver Cloud 3 Rolls Royce, so not a single computer in it.
All right, appreciate it, Ong. Thanks for the update. Always good to talk a little cyber with you. Ong Sway joining us from Red Balloon Security. He's the CEO and Chief Scientist. Little heads up for what to look for as our cars become more connected. Not the old school Rolls, though.